Verse 3, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called the children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Yeah, all right. Give somebody a high five. Good job on that. As we're talking about this idea, this concept of being blessed, a lot of times the water is kind of muddy, right? We're not talking about being lucky or being fortunate. We're actually kind of reframing that word because as believers, we should know what it means to be blessed. And so what our kind of working definition that we've been talking about through this series is blessed really means this: to experience fully our God-breathed intention. So that's what it means to be blessed. It doesn't mean that, you got a lot of money in the bank account. Those things can be signs of blessing. But really what we're talking about is that we are experiencing fully what God intended for us. And listen, if you were doing that and Jesus shows us the mindsets and the attitudes that we have when we are blessed, then you're gonna start seeing these things show up in your life, and then we can consider ourselves blessed. And so what I love about how these Beatitudes are connected, the first Beatitude that we talked about was blessed are those who are poor in spirit, remember? And that, which means like a beggar in spirit. And so basically Jesus was saying, congratulations if you're in desperate need of God, for yours is the kingdom. So he says this, for yours is the kingdom. And then at the end, so he opens up for yours is the kingdom, right? If you're desperate in your spirit, if you're desperate for God. And then he ends with saying, blessed are the persecuted. Those that are persecuted for righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom. Now, it's interesting to note that Jesus didn't say, mine is the kingdom. We know his is the kingdom. It's his kingdom. It belongs to him. But he is saying, actually, the kingdom is in our hands. Yeah. Jesus told many that the kingdom is within reach. It's within our grasp. And so the kingdom of God is not just a place that we go to when we die, a place in the sky whenever we exit our bodies. Sometimes I'm wrestling with Uriah, and when I'm wrestling with him, I tell him, I say, I'm going to extract your soul from your body, And so we're wrestling, and I say that's just, kind of being silly. And so when your soul leaves, your soul is going to go to heaven, right? You're going to stand before God, and he's going to decide if you can stay in heaven or not. And so when we talk about the kingdom of heaven, we're not talking about a place that we're going. We're talking about a reality that we live in where Jesus is on the throne. But this is what he's saying. He says the kingdom is ours. Peter was given the keys of the kingdom. So the framework of the kingdom is that God is in charge of the product. He's in charge of the kingdom. The church is in charge of the distribution. So we have the product in our possession because we have Christ, and now we are distributing that. And so Jesus says that if we are persecuted, that we have this wonderful kingdom within reach, within our grasp. Now, last week we talked about the difference between peacemakers and peacekeepers a little bit. Do you remember that? And so isn't it interesting that he follows up with peacemakers with being persecuted? Because we think if I'm being a peacemaker, which really you mean being peacekeeper, that you're not going to cause any drama, and so you wouldn't get any persecution, right? If you're just trying to make everybody happy and just be the good guy all the time, they're not going to persecute you. But basically, within peacemaking, there will be persecution. So that word, the persecuted, is the Greek word deoko, and that means this: to put to flight or to drive away, to chase down, or to hunt. It's like the crosshairs are on you if you are in Christ. If you're following Christ, you can expect to have the crosshairs of the enemy on your life. Yeah. Did you know that? I like to say it this way: if the devil's not on your back, He's on your side. And so we can expect opposition in this life because we belong to Christ. So it's not, listen, if someone told you that you come to Jesus and it's just easy, you just receive the Lord and then, it's like you're just like on a just a happy-go-lucky trail all the time and everybody's gonna love you and appreciate you and you're just gonna feel so good. That is not the gospel. That is not the gospel. This is not the lifestyle that Jesus tells us that we're gonna experience. We will have joy and we will have peace that supersedes anything that we're experiencing on this earth, but understand that there will be hostility. So persecution is this: those who are experiencing any form of hostility as a result of following Jesus. Yeah. Anything that comes against you as a result of following Jesus. Now, anytime that we're reading the New Testament and we see that word suffering, most of us think, because we're Americans and we're very comfortable, anything that is causing me discomfort, that's suffering. But understand, the grid for New Testament suffering is not emotional issues or even physical sickness, all this kind of stuff. That is not the suffering that the New Testament is talking about. The suffering that the New Testament is talking about is suffering because of the gospel. Suffering because you are following Jesus, because you are living right. And so when Jesus says this, he's saying that you will, the persecuted ones are blessed. And it's very foreign to us in most ways. So this is what he says in verse 11. What is persecution? Blessed are you when people insult you. So insulting you, reviling you, criticizing you, mocking you, disgracing you, those are all forms of persecution. Then persecute, which would be the intentional act of singling you out, to hunt you down, to be after you. And we understand that people will do this, right? The enemy will use people, come on, to just like God will use people to hand out his issues, to do his bidding. And then he says this: they will say false things about you. They will lie about you. So believers, you can expect, if you are pursuing Jesus, you can expect to be lied about. You can expect to be singled out. You can expect to be criticized and disgraced. You can expect all those things for following Jesus. Now, we don't like that because we're Americans and that's very foreign to us. But this is what Jesus says is going to happen. That rumors are going to spread about, that fake news is going to be posted about you because you follow Jesus. And that is the prerequisite, right? Because of me. And I want you to remember that it's because of me. It's not based upon your personality. It's not based upon your approach. It's not based upon you being obnoxious or self-righteous or acting a fool. It's not for you having odd ideas. Sometimes we'll have, we have things what we call like closed-handed doctrines, and then we have like open-handed doctrines, or we have like concepts, maybe things that we're exploring or ideas that are kind of out of the box, right? Paul talks about this. He talks about these ideologies that we can kind of adopt and things, tangents that we get up on. There was a guy that is a Christian. He's a follower of Christ, and he's a public figure, and he is a flat earther. Now, I'm not a flat earther. If you're a flat earther, great. You can just go ahead and do that. So he is very, like, this is his thing, right? Just keep walking and see if you fall off if you're a flat earther. And so he's like, this is like one of the main things that he's known about in the arena that he rolls in. And so this guy's like all about, like, he's known as being a flat earther. He's very public about it. And so people are coming against him because he's a flat earther. Not because he's a Christian, but because he's a flat earther. So what he does is he gets on a podium and he starts talking about it. He's like, well, Jesus said they would hate you because of me. And so they hate me because of Jesus. Bro, they don't hate you because of Jesus. They hate you because you have this ideology that is not essential, and you've chosen that to be the hill that you die on. And so a lot of times we can have ridiculous ideas, or we can add a lot of things that are to what we would call the core doctrines, the core things about the gospel. And then we make that the main thing. Yep. And then people come against us because we've made something else the main thing instead of Jesus being the main thing. And then we go, I'm so persecuted. Yeah. I'm persecuted. You're persecuted because you're acting like a fool. You're not being persecuted because of righteousness. You're being persecuted because you're annoying. And so you don't get a badge for that. You don't get to say, I'm suffering for the gospel for that. And many have done this. Many have said they're suffering for the gospel because they're mean-spirited or because they're ugly. And we've all seen this. We've all seen people that have been in the church, and they're kind of self-righteous, and they kind of had this mindset, and they kind of put everyone else down. And then anytime they receive opposition from that posture, which is opposite of all the postures that we've been talking about, and when they start exemplifying that and someone calls them out, they said, well, Jesus said that we would be persecuted. Listen, they are not persecuting you because of righteousness. They're persecuting you because of you. And it's important for us to remember that. The persecution that he is talking about here, that Jesus is talking about, is a result from living in alignment with God's will, character, and commands. That basically we were being faithful in a world, hear me, we are being faithful in a world that often opposes what Jesus values. Now, it doesn't take long to find out that the world really likes the Jesus that they've made up. Right? Even atheists, even people that don't believe the Bible, will use Jesus sometimes as an authority figure to propagate their agenda. Have you seen this before? And so, we're not talking about following this false version of Jesus. When we're talking about Jesus, listen, I am a part of a Facebook group that is the Josh Browns of the world. And there are thousands of Josh Browns in the world. And some of them are dads, some of them are pastors, some of them are many things, but they're not the Josh Brown that I am. Right. The name might be the same, but the person is completely different. And this is what we've done with Jesus. We've created a Jesus that's palatable for people so that Jesus will be accepted. Hear me. We sugarcoat Jesus, right? Just a spoonful of sugar to help the medicine go down. We've done all this stuff to kind of make Jesus look more marketable. Yeah. And Jesus was not very marketable. The systems of the age, he was marketable to the people that needed him. Yeah. And this was the main point of his ministry, is to getting people to see their need for God. So when he says stuff like, be perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect, people are taken off because they're like, that standard's too high, because there's only one way to be that, and that's in him. So I would suggest the version of Jesus that you have, if it is very widely accepted, then it's not Jesus. It's not the real Jesus. This is what he says. John chapter 15, verse 18. If the world hates you, keep in mind that it hated me first. If you belong to the world, it would love you as its own. How many know that you don't belong to this world? This world is not your home. We should not, hear me, beloved, we should not find comfort in this world. We find comfort in Christ as we live in this world. But my comfort is not found in this world. This world does not own me. I belong to Christ. I belong to Jesus. And I am not interested in feasting at the table that the Lord provides. And this is the problem that we're seeing, is many believers see the world is for them. Hear me, the world and all of its worship of idols, and the world and all of its delicacies and conveniences and all this, it is not for you. You need to understand that the world is your mission, not your friend. The world is not your companion. It's your commission. We are called to reach the world, not to conform like the world, not to be like the world, not to make Christ more palatable so the world will receive him. The call for the world is to bow the knee before King Jesus, to receive his gospel. And so he's like, listen, the world's going to hate you because you don't belong to it, but I have chosen you out of the world. And he's not talking physically. He's talking about the mindsets. When we talk about the world, we're not talking about the people. We're talking about the paradigms. We're talking about the way the world thinks, the way the world processes, the way the world systemizes, the way the world is entertained. Right. Do you understand? And so we are different because Jesus has called us out of that. Remember what I told you, a servant is no greater than his master. If they persecuted me, they will persecute you also. If they obeyed my teaching, they will obey yours also. In other words, if the word is good because you're in him and you're following him, then they're going to want to follow that same word. They're going to want to be obedient to the same things. And so I'm not talking about not being winsome. Are you hearing me? We are called to be winsome. We are called to provide answers. We are called to extend a hand, but we're not called to feast from that table. Hear me, beloved. Yeah. Hear me. And so I have in me sometimes, I get a little bit concerned if I'm not facing any kind of trouble for Jesus. Yeah. Because Jesus promised it would happen. So if there's no resistance, if there's no opposition, I get a little bit concerned. Have I grown too comfortable in this world? Yeah. Are you tracking? Yes. I'm not pursuing Christianity. I'm not pursuing what's hard. Hard should come. Yeah. Because I am living in an opposite direction than the world is. I have a different value system than the world has. I live by a different standard and a different code than the world has. And so Jesus said, because we live that way, the world will reject us. The world will actually hate us because of Jesus. Yeah. And this is what he says to do. Rejoice and be glad. All right, Lord. I mean, you're like telling us to be perfect. And then you're telling us when people are killing us and ridiculing us and beating us, you're telling us to be happy about it. Yeah. How? Because great is your reward. And he says this, in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. So the people that have gone before Jesus, who were pointing to Jesus, they were also persecuted, right? Remember Jeremiah, if you're familiar with Jeremiah. Jeremiah had this lifestyle where he was declaring the word of the Lord, and he was getting arrested. He was being opposed by all the other, false prophets. Jeremiah is one of my favorite prophets just because of like the progression in his life. He comes to the Lord and he's like, Lord, I don't know. He's like, I can't even speak. Like I'm coming to the Lord's like, I'll put my words in your mouth. So he starts speaking the word of the Lord. Well, there's in Jeremiah chapter 20, he's actually been imprisoned. He's in stocks. They release him. And as soon as he gets out, and he's like, Lord, I tried to be quiet about it, but I couldn't. Your word was like a fire shut up in my bones, and I had to say something. In other words, your gospel is so real. Your word is so true and legit that I must declare the word of the Lord. And because he did this, it put him in a precarious place of persecution. Yeah. And so before we get into Jeremiah, first thing we got to do is consider the reward. For our light, 2 Corinthians 4:17, for our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal weight that far outweighs them all. Now hold on. He says that the things that they're going through, Christians dying all around him on the left and the right, people are being persecuted, people are being thrown in jail. He calls that light. I wake up, like someone unfriends me on Facebook. I'm like, that's heavy. Right? Someone leaves the church. I'm like, this is so heavy. Right? And he's like, it's light. He's like, this is so light and momentary. For our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that outweighs them all. What's he saying? He's talking about our reward. When we get into heaven, we're going to look at the Lord, and the glory that we receive in that moment is going to be so much heavier. So think of it like childbearing. So we have 4 children. Leslie has been in labor 4 times. Those are 4 of the most intense moments of my life. And so she is, I think for her life too. Yeah, so I think so. And so she's having all this like intensity, all this pain. I mean, it's chaotic. She handled it very well, way better than you see on TV. But it was still intense. I'm stressed out. And then the baby comes. You don't think about any of it. You don't think about the pain. You don't think about the crying and the excruciating and all the things that are going through. You don't think about any of that. All you think of, the glory's here. The baby is here. And so Paul's saying it's kind of like childbearing, right? It's like, it seems really hard when you're in it, but when you get on the other side of it, when you receive the reward, you're like, wasn't that big of a deal. Yeah. I'd go through it again. Right. 1 million times I'd go through it again. Yeah. I go through it every day to get what I have. Yeah. And so Paul is equating our light, he calls them light because he knows that there's a glory that outweighs them all. So when we consider the reward, Revelation chapter 6, it talks about that there's a white robe that will be given for those that have been martyred. So there'll be when we get into heaven, there will be a ceremony that this is why they would give out robes for different types of ceremony. There'll be special robes given for those who have received a martyr's death. And so we will all get to stand one day for those that have gone before us, those who have suffered and died because of the gospel, and we will get to rejoice with them. Revelation chapter 2, verse 10, to the church of Smyrna, Jesus says this, be faithful even to the point of death, and I will give you life as your victor's crown. So you will have a crown of victory. There are rewards that come with suffering. Be faithful. Beloved, whatever you go through because of Christ, one day we will have the reward of seeing him face to face and seeing the look in his eye and him going, you did it. You did it. It was hard. You were rejected. You were despised. You were persecuted. And you did it. You continued. You loved me well. Beloved, that's what I'm living for. I'm living to look in his eye and him go, yeah, you did it well, Josh. We will get rewarded. And there is specific and special reward. Jesus is teaching us this for those that suffer persecution. Number 2, consider the company. And this again, we can be considered like with prophets of old, like Jeremiah, who we talked about a few moments ago. Think about Elijah, who had to flee Jezebel because of righteousness. Think of John the Baptist, who was persecuted, who dies for Jesus, who's beheaded. Think of 10 of the 12 apostles. Think of that. They weren't running around saying blessed and highly favored with a ichthus on their car, on their Benz. I mean, this is their crown of their life of God's blessing was that they were able, I believe it was Andrew that went to the cross. And when he went to the cross, he was weeping and laughing deliriously. And he clings to the cross and he's like, what joy that I would be able to die like Jesus died for me. And so just these stories over and over again. John the Revelator, John the Beloved is exiled to Patmos, which big mistake, because he gets another revelation of Jesus. But before that, they try to boil him in oil, suffering for Jesus, persecuted because of Jesus. Hebrews 11 gives us what we call the hall of faith, which is all these stories of all these people that were righteous, that suffered. Beloved, if you are suffering for God, really for righteousness, not because of something you brought on yourself, but because of the life that he has called you to, you are in good company. You are in good company. This is our history as people of God. Hear me. Now, many of us, and I want to broaden your worldview for just a moment. Many of us, when we say persecution, we say, well, that doesn't happen anymore. Right? Because we live in America, we live in Texas, And we have this society that is very tolerable to the gospel at most levels, at least in the extreme senses. But I want to remind you or tell you today, if you don't know this, that Christians are historically and currently the most persecuted group in the world. It's not Muslims. Come on, there's no other group that it suffers more for their lifestyle than Christians today. In fact, over 380 million Christians face persecution globally every year. 380 million, 1 in 7. Now, maybe not 1 in 7 Christians that you know, but globally, our global family, our global kingdom, 1 in 7 face persecution because of their faith. 4,000 to 6,000 die for their faith every year. Today, in 2025, 4,000 to 6,000 people will die because of Christ. And persecution, listen, persecution is not just violence. It includes intense pressure in daily life, losing jobs, facing discrimination, being forced out of homes, breaking up families. When I was at Christ for the Nations, I had friends that were part of Muslim nations. And as soon as they came to Jesus, their whole family denounced them as a family member. In fact, they put a threat out on them to kill them, and they fled to the U.S. This is what is happening globally today. And we get upset because the coffee isn't warm enough, or it's too strong. Or our kids got in an argument. Have you ever been around kids? They do that a lot. Or someone sat in our seat. That is not persecution. There was one that had reserved on it. All right. What you're doing today by sitting in a service, hearing the word of God, having a Bible, worshiping God, is a death sentence in countries today in the world that we live in. Yeah. Understand this, persecution is happening right now in real time. Yeah. But we are so far removed from it, and this is what we say. We're blessed because we don't face it. And what's interesting about all this is the world is silent about it. Any other group receives this kind of persecution and it's all over the news. Yeah. That's okay. We don't need the coverage. Media ignores it. Christians are labeled hateful and bigots. Welcome to America. And what we say is we're blessed because we don't have to face these things. And you know what you see in other countries? You don't see a church that's silenced. You don't see a church that's shrinking because they're killing all the Christians. You see a church that's thriving. And in America, although we are seeing a surgence right now, especially like in like Gen Z, like a growth, like we're on a 10-year high right now. God is really doing something in our nation. But most Americans, we consider ourselves blessed because we're mostly safe from persecution. Well, we're so blessed. I'm so blessed to live in a nation where I can express my faith. And I'm not saying that is a false statement, but what I am saying is this, is that Jesus said we're blessed if we're persecuted. And that's sobering. And that makes me want to check if I'm really living this life the way I should be. And we all know, we see all the criticism about the church. We all talk about it. We all hear about it. And is that criticism legit and valid? Yes. But you know what? You don't see the underground church in China bashing the underground church in China. Yeah. You see them clinging to their brothers and sisters. You see them defending their brothers and sisters. And we all know the issues that arise with the ease of becoming a Christian in our culture. It's blatantly obvious, isn't it? Just sign the card, just pray the prayer, and do whatever you want to do. Welcome to Christianity. You're blessed and highly favored. Get the t-shirt. Get Now Worship. Worship for teens. Love God's shoelaces. Bumper stickers for your God. I mean, the whole thing. We have made Christianity so consumeristic. So you say, well, we don't have persecution. This is what the enemy uses to silence the church in America. Are you ready? Materialism. Consumerism. The obsession with comfort, convenience, the obsession with entertainment. You know, you have these nations where people have one page of a physical Bible. And they cherish it and they read it and they memorize it and they hold it dear to their heart. It's the most precious thing in their life. And we do that with our Netflix account. We want to hold on to our compromises and say it's permitted by God. And these are the things that we hold so dearly. These are the things that we want to be known for, is all these kind of liberties. Can we or can we not? In other countries, they're going, can we live or can we not today? We're self-focused. We're consumed by the applause of others. We're highly skeptical of anything that we can't rationalize. We're driven by preference and opinion. I mean, if you don't like this church, if you don't like me, you can just go up the road and find another pastor. You can go find a pastor that preaches the word like you want to. Welcome to America. You can just do whatever you want. But if you're under persecution, you don't get the choice. You can't get on Google and find out. If you're on Google, that church is going to be closed next week. I'm grateful for Google. It's been huge for the growth that we've experienced. But in many places in the world, if you're findable, you'll be destroyed. Yes. We are so resistant, and these are the ways the enemy is silencing us. Hear me. Is by being resistant to anything that doesn't feel good. Anything I don't like, any sense of correction, we call it trauma. Right? I experienced trauma. The pastor hurt my feelings. I have trauma at church hurt. Dude, welcome to being family. Have you been, y'all are in families, right? Like, do you fight with your siblings? Yeah. Do you think that your parents made bad decisions? Did they at times? Just like you are? Yeah. It's crazy, the small amount of grace that we have for one another in the body of Christ. I want you to know all these things that we're talking about, consumerism, materialism, comfort, convenience, all these things, these are not kingdom values. These are not kingdom mindsets. These are not kingdom paradigms. These are paradigms of the world. This is what the world offers us. This is what the convenience of our society offers us. That you can drive down the road and you can ask Siri to tell you how tall Michael Jordan was, and you'll know within seconds. You can find out any information that you want to know in minutes. I don't think that's good, because now we have information with no responsibility. And then we call ourselves blessed. And then Jesus looks at us and he goes, you know what's blessed? When people hate you and revile you and despise you because of me. You're blessed. Yours is the kingdom. You've got something better than they've got. So in Acts chapter 5, when we're talking about being rejoicing and being highly favored, right? Being glad, we consider the reward, we consider the company. When you read through the book of Acts, you're going to see church looks a little different than it does today. And so in Acts chapter 5, the disciples are preaching the gospel. It's not accepted. They're thrown in prison. Supernaturally, the Lord delivers out of prison. They keep preaching the gospel. They're not like, well, I don't want to get thrown in jail again. They're like, we have a mission. They start preaching the gospel. And then they get arrested again. And they're before the Sanhedrin, which is like a court. And they're there and they're like, this is what these guys are doing. You guys we've told you before, stop talking about Jesus. And they're like, so a Pharisee ends up kind of going to bat for them. He's like, listen, you guys just need to quit. working so hard on this. Go ahead and let them go. So this is what it says. They called the apostles in. So they're having this debate about what they're going to do with them. They call them in. They have them flogged. Do you know what flogging is? Flogging is what Jesus received whenever he was whipped with the cat o' nine tails. Like almost dying. In fact, there was a Roman law that said you can't hit them X amount of times because if you do, they'll die. So they can only beat them to the point of death, but they can't kill them. And so they have them flogged because they're preaching about Jesus. And then they order them not to speak about Jesus again. So take that. You've been arrested. We're going to let you go, but first we're going to punish you, and then we're going to throw you out and quit talking about Jesus. They left the Sanhedrin, bloodied and battered, rejoicing. What? I mean, not me. I'm checking into the hospital. I'm taking a sabbatical. They leave rejoicing because they had, listen, this was their mindset. Hear me. They had considered themselves worthy of suffering disgrace for the name. They rejoiced because they could suffer like Jesus suffered. Day after day. And it doesn't stop. They don't like check, I've suffered for the Lord. I put my time in. I get a reward in heaven. No, day after day in the temple courts and from house to house. They never stopped teaching and proclaiming the good news that Jesus is the Messiah. They never stopped. They couldn't be silenced through the persecution. Theirs was the kingdom. So how do we rejoice when this persecution is coming? We consider the reward. We consider the company. And the highest company we consider Christ. One of my favorite verses, Hebrews chapter 12, says that Jesus is the author and the finisher of our faith. This is right after he talks about the company of all these that have gone before us. Chapter 11 is the hall of faith. All these that have suffered, all these that have endured for righteousness. And then it says, therefore, since we have a great cloud of witnesses, all these people that have gone on before us, all these martyrs that have died for us, all these people that have their pay, they are on the sidelines. They are rooting. It's like an arena, and they are here and they are chanting. They're a cloud of witnesses. They're all around us. They're watching you. They're watching me, and they're going, come on, take the gospel. It says, looking unto Jesus, the author and the finisher of our faith, through the joy. Is that word again? For who the joy that was set before him endured the cross. How did Jesus have joy going to the cross? I thought he had sorrow when he was in the garden. He did have sorrow in the garden, but he also had joy because he knew that what he was doing would be rewarded. You know what the joy of Jesus was? You. You were the joy that was set before him. He said, I will endure this, Father. I don't really want to do it, but I'll do it, and I know there's a reward. For the joy that was set before him, he endured the cross, despised the shame, and is now set at the right hand of the throne of God. And this is what it says in verse 3. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. Now, Jesus is talking to a persecuted church. The writer of Hebrews is talking to a persecuted church. Consider him. Consider Jesus, who endured so much that you can endure. Beloved, it's way deeper than I'm going through some relational tension. Like, not that that's not important, but listen, when all suffering is not biblical. I mean, all suffering is not the same. Yeah. The suffering that's biblical is talking about is the suffering for the name, suffering for Christ. Consider him who endured such opposition for sinners so you will not grow weary, that you won't grow weary whenever you're advancing the mission of Jesus. Jesus is the persecuted one. So when he tells us this, I love this. When he tells us this, he's also telling us what he's going to do. That he will be persecuted, and because of that, he will receive the kingdom. Hear me. He will be the king on the kingdom. He will defeat death. He will defeat the grave. He will be the king of the kingdom, leading the kingdom. But he also says to his disciples, and you also, when you're persecuted, you will also inherit what I'm providing. Yeah. Beloved, without the persecuted one, without Jesus, the righteous persecuted one, there'll be no new covenant. There's no gospel. There's no church family. There's no life in Christ without the righteous one being persecuted. And as we look forward to Passion Week, understand that none of the life that you have in Christ is possible without Jesus being persecuted for righteousness. No life in the kingdom do we get without Jesus being persecuted. Has anyone been more unjustly persecuted than Jesus? No one. No one is perfect like Jesus, and it's so unjust that he received this persecution, that he faced his entire ministry, ongoing opposition from the system that was supposed to love God, opposed Jesus. He experienced betrayal from his own disciples. First from Judas, and then Peter. I mean, Peter's like his boy. He's not going anywhere. He's going to build the church on the revelation that Peter has. I mean, Peter's like his guy. And Peter's like, Lord, I'm committed. I'm all in. I'm all in, Lord. I've been with you. I'm going to stick it out. And Jesus is like, you're not, Peter. I mean, I'm still going to build the kingdom on the revelation you had, but you're going to deny me. He's like, there's no way. And what does he do? He tells the Lord he's going to do something. How many times did we do that? Lord, I'm going to do this no matter what. Until we don't. He endured false accusation. He was mocked, ridiculed, and scorned by soldiers and crowds. He was brutally tortured through a scourging, through beating, and the crown of thorns. He was humiliated publicly, naked on a cross among sinners. The worst of criminals, Jesus is dying. Why? Because of righteousness. Because of the righteousness of his identity. So listen, understand this. Jesus didn't die because he claimed to be the Messiah. That wasn't worthy of the death penalty. There were many Messiahs that came before Christ. They didn't die for that. You know why Jesus died? Because when he makes this statement, unless you believe that I am God in the flesh, you will die in your sin. Yeah. So Jesus was crucified for blasphemy, for claiming to be God. And we live in a culture that says you don't really have to believe that about Jesus. If you don't believe that about Jesus, you got the wrong Jesus. Jesus is God in the flesh, fully God, fully man in the flesh, the only righteous one. And there's only one way to do it, and that's if God himself did it. And he was persecuted because of righteousness. And he was persecuted because of his purpose. And his purpose was to seek and to save that which is lost. His purpose was to destroy the works of the devil. And this was a righteous purpose, and he suffered because of it. And there is blessing, hear me, there is blessing in the horror of the cross. There is blessing because we are the reward for his suffering. There is blessing because we are the joy that was set before him. We are the reward of his suffering. So Jesus makes this statement in Matthew chapter 10, verse 38. This is hardcore. Look, whoever does not take up their cross and follow me is not worthy of me. You don't see that on too many t-shirts. You're not going to find that at Hobby Lobby. I love Hobby Lobby. But you're not going to find that one there. Whoever finds their life will lose it. Whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. I've met a lot of people in my life that said, man, if it came down to it, I know I'm not really like living that well for the Lord. I know I'm not fervent for the Lord, or, you know, I know I struggle, but I know that if someone came to me and asked me, you know, try to get me to deny Christ at gunpoint, I wouldn't deny Christ, but you're not even willing to live for him now. Why do you think that you would be willing to die for him if you can't even live for him now? And here's the reality is in Jesus, when we come to him, we die before we die. We die before we die. Why were the disciples able to die for Jesus? Because they were already dead. The Apostle Paul says it this way in Galatians chapter 2, verse 20, he says, I have been crucified with Christ. I was crucified with him. I no longer live, but Christ lives within me. Other words, I gave my life to Jesus. I died to Saul of Tarsus. I'm alive as Paul the Apostle. I no longer live, Christ lives in me. The life I live in the body, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. Jesus gave himself for me. It's so easy for me to give myself to him. It's not about me. It's not about my plans. It's not about my ambitions. It's not about my hopes. It's not about my dreams. It's not about my success. It's not about my failures. Jesus came and he rescued me. And because of that, I go, Lord, you can have it all. You can have every part of me. And so when we come to Jesus, we have to have the willingness that says, you can have it all. We gotta have the willingness. We've gotta be the willingness to die. We die to our ambitions. Not just, it's easy to say, Lord, give me a clean slate. Lord, forgive me of my sins. He loves that. He did that for you. But are you willing to die for your future? Are you willing to die for the thing that you've been storing up your whole life? I've been working on this my whole life. Are you willing to go, Lord, if you want me to do something else, I'll do it. Lord, I've spent all these years building this business, but if you want me to give it up, I'll give it. It's yours. It's all yours. We got to die to our ambitions. We got to die to the affirmation and the applause of men. This is hard for me because I really like making people happy. Am I willing to die for the approval of others? Am I willing to fear God more than I fear men? And am I willing to die to self? Am I willing to die to like, well, that's not my personality trait, or that's not really my gift? Am I willing to just die to all of that, all this reasoning that I've developed to kind of get out of surrendering myself to God? Am I willing to just die to that and just say, Lord, have it all. Have it all. Have my relationships, have the way that I raise my kids, the schools that I send them to. Lord, I'm willing to do whatever you want to do. Not my will, but yours be done. You got to die before you die.
Thank you so much for joining us today at Overflow Church. Make sure and comment below and let us know that you are here to encounter Jesus with us today. Also, subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss anything coming from us in the future. Have a great week.